Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epic League Unlock here. I'm here to guys to do a little in the heart of the off season, a little roster cooking to put together an Avengers type lineup, an all-star squad for every major region. And again, the rules prerequisites coming into this got to be a domestic player from that region, and we're limiting 2 guys from the same team. Otherwise, you're just going to put together, a Genji or T1 just fully all together. So 2 players per team limit, and I will say the LCK, you could probably assemble about 3 of these teams that would beat everybody else.
Yeah, it really is one of those ones where you change the percentages of what you're valuing. What is the equation that equals out to the all-star status? By 1% in a certain category, you're ending up with an entirely different lineup in the LCK. You cannot say the same thing if you apply it to the LCS or, heck, even the LPL, frankly, for what's been going on over there. That is absolutely how it has been. And I think one of the other interesting angles I want to bring to this one is thinking about these, all-star pro teams being put together. Who is the Captain America of each one of these squads? Who is that guy amongst these 5 that is lifting the shield up and saying, Avengers Assemble, to assemble this squad of great League of Legends talent? Let's dive into each region.
And we start at that toppity top with the LCK, the A+ of A+ squads. I'm throwing together Zeus on that top side, Owner in the jungle, because there's some built-in synergy there because they used to play together. Throw Chovy in the mid lane and a bot lane of Viper, Kyria to put together. That's 2 T1 members, 2 Hanwha Life members. Remember, Zeus is on HLE now, guys. And then Chovy, Mr. Genji in the mid lane. That's a pretty good team.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty fantastic team, and I'm calling it right out of the beginning. This has to be Chovy making the Avengers Assemble call. He's making the call to bring in this help. It couldn't have been any of the former T1 members, because the T1 fans and the family that organization is. They're bringing Avengers Assemble. The unkillable Demon King is in the mid lane. So having it be Chovy, I've got him as the guy assembling this squad, this all-star team. And yes, I think one of the best things that you can look at with this angle is bringing in some of that built-in synergy that Owner and Zeus would have from the T1 Dynasty days and that type of era, combined with the uptick in performance and kind of confidence that we have seen from Owner this past year. You put those 2 things together, I think that is the secret combination for this LCK team.
And again, we're looking heading into the next year, or peak form right now is how you're judging these guys to assemble them. Because a year or 2 ago, you wouldn't be putting Owner here. You'd put any of these other Korean star junglers, Canyon, Kanavi, in there. Peanut, obviously retired now, so definitely not going to be included. But there'd be guys you'd put ahead of Owner, but not going off of 2025. And then again, you go even deeper with that Owner Kyria synergy, who are both often referred to as that X factor for T1.
Yeah, so much of the creativity of those eye-popping plays that Kyria is able to perform in the support role, he always credits that creativity, that go factor coming from Owner and the plays that he makes and the communication that comes through. So I like bringing that to this squad. And I think when you're looking at the ADC position, of course, it's the LCK. There's so many great options that you can make arguments for, even without throwing in the 2 players from each team type of a limitation on a list like this. You would be looking at a guy like Viper to take this slot, and how he performed. The numbers are absolutely game-changing type of numbers that you saw from him throughout the entirety of the year from Hanwha Life.
And again, the LCK only gets insane when you say, wow, I feel like you're missing some guys. And truthfully, you throw together a second team, you're putting together something like Keen, Canyon, Faker, Gumayushi, Delight. That's again 2 Hanwha Life, 1 T1, 2 Genji. Basically, these other squads, a team like that is the only thing that could rival this first LCK team.
It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe type of land, right? They've got all the different dimensions, pocket zones you can pull from, because yes, you can reach out, you can grab that squad, you can reach out for a squad that's got BDD in the
Yep.
mid lane as one of these possibilities. Heck, even I would accept a dark, or maybe not after this past year, but in the last couple of years, maybe a Showmaker appearance, and he gets the cameo, right? He gets the
That's a good
Stanley
fourth
cameo
team.
in this.
Showmaker can head
Yeah,
the fourth team, you know.
absolutely. But still, the fact that we can even go down a list like that and talk about a power level of a potential fourth team, yeah, that's how we're getting into this one with the lineup of the LCK.
Yeah, I mean, Ruler, still a guy you haven't talked about. Kanavi, I know has played in the LPL, but Korean domestic player. So Tarzan, like you could easily assemble 4 LCK teams that you'd be legit terrified to match up against. Even when you throw in what would be the first team in the LPL, you're going, okay, but there's a lot of guys who are Korean that are dominating in the LPL, especially when you're looking mid, jungle, even top. You think the Shy, Tarzan, Rookie, Doombi, all these guys, nope, not included. So for that first team, you got a couple BLG guys. We know the solo lane stars are Bin and Knight. Gala in AD carry, Hong, who had a very good year on top esports, and jungle is where it gets very tricky because Kanavi and Tarzan are the premier LPL junglers, and they ain't Chinese, so gets a bit tricky.
It's a little bit different when you're having to search through in that type of, with those type of restrictions, right? When you are looking at a region like the LPL. I call this one the LCK. I'm calling them in for the Thanos level of threat. That's where I'm bringing in that Avengers squad. This maybe is the first fight against Thanos in the movie, where the Avengers, they put up a good fight, but maybe it's not enough. That's how I feel about this LPL squad coming on through, and who is going to be the guy. It's, of course, it's going to be the mid lane for this squad. Again, lifting the Captain America shield. It's Knight bringing on these guys because you know what? He's already been doing this in his career in the LPL, lifting the shield and saying, who is going to stand with me against the best of the best in the world? Because I will be on the best squad that we have here. Knight brings that to the table a lot of times. And yes, there are, I think, certainly valid, people detracting for him from the international performances that we have seen. But I still think there's more than enough runway, more than enough proof in the pudding that this is the guy to lead the mid lane for the LPL squad.
And, truthfully, beyond Knight, there's 3 out of the 5 roles here. You can go. You've got some depth on the bench for the LPL to make some other teams. 369's a guy you could talk about. Shanks or Cream in that mid lane. We know Jackie loves in at AD carry. Elk in there. It's support and jungle that the LPL are a glaring weakness. You throw Tien here in jungle, and who else are you putting? Wei, Jun? These are guys who were just getting benched or had big down years in their own right. Maybe you're throwing in a guy like Milky Way, who we haven't even talked about and didn't have a great 2025. And then support, you're looking at some guys like On and Mako, who have been around for a long time, but not at the highest level this past year. So those 2 roles have no chance for the LPL to match up against the LCK.
It's kind of one of the problems. You put together, going with the superhero Avengers type of theme, you throw these 2, together, a civil war, right, going on. I'm not seeing the matchup of superheroes, as you talked about, in that support and in that jungle position, really specifically when you are lining up against the established Avengers, the Iron Mans, the Captain Americas, the full superhero squads that is coming from the LCK. It's different when you're looking at this LPL one. Doesn't matter how much we talk about Knight, talk about Bin. You can mention, as you said, you've got Jackie Love in reserve for guys like Gala, all these things. When you are looking at that support position and, to me as well, extending into that jungle, you just aren't provided that same level of firepower, same superpowers that we see when you're looking at the LCK and you're looking at guys like an Owner.
And that's exactly why we've seen so many Korean players over in the LPL, and that's kind of been, I don't want to say a crutch, but a featured aspect of the LPL going forward. So when you do have these all domestic matchups, it does feel like they're maybe at a slight advantage, but either way, probably still the main contenders against the LCK in this completely hypothetical all-star matchup. However, I will say the West can put together some decent squads to hold up. Maybe not against the LCK. Everyone's playing for silver in this made-up fantasy land, but especially you look at the European side of things, and again, these are guys who aren't necessarily playing in the LEC, all of them, but at the very least, European by origin and wouldn't be taking up an import slot. That's how you get a guy like Inspired on this roster. But a couple G2 members, Broken Blade and Caps, Kalist and Alvaro in the bottom lane. Feels like BB and Caps, great vocal leaders alongside Inspired. BB very flexible in his top lane play, and then a dual carry threat of Caps and Kalist. This team looks pretty good.
I'm excited about this one. I'm ready to say that this is, again, not the Avengers level like we're talking about with the threats of the LCK. This might just be the French or Spanish dub of the Avengers movie. That's what I'm thinking over here in LEC, because yes, I'm thrilled with this lineup and this combination of players, and I'm going with Kalist as the young gun of Captain America, Captain LEC, raising the shield and saying, assemble on me. I don't want any scrubs. I don't want some simple team that, we get to Worlds and that is the achievement and that's it. I got to push the envelope. I want to take it to that ultimate level, and who is going to stand with me? Give me some of the veterans that have been proven in battle for this region. And alongside him, Alvaro, I think that, again, is speaking to some of that youth for the region. You bring in maybe that mercenary hero Inspired comes in to join the group. I like this team for the LEC.
The only maybe question mark or X this squad might get is you might have too many vocal players. You've heard G2 comps, Broken Blade and Caps are the main guys chatting there. Even Kalist has been the most vocal AD carry probably in the LEC, and we know Inspired is 80% of the comms that were going on FlyQuest. So maybe the only knock on this team is there's too many voices going on.
And that's where, again, I think it's important that I make that distinction that it is Kalist raising the shield to assemble this squad. I want him at that leading charge with some veteran input coming in from the sides of BB, Caps, Inspired, the rest of them. I think that is certainly going to be one of those factors that would have to be considered, is where is that hierarchy in the communication. And that would be one of those ones where I want it put on the young star. I want that hunger, that desire that he has to change the fortunes of this region, unscarred by failures of the past. That's what I want to see leading the charge for this LEC Avengers squad.
And if you were to, make some tinkering with the squad, maybe a different flavor or personal preference, maybe you're going to have two G2 members for sure, but maybe in the AD carry spot, you can slide in Hansama over Kalist. Maybe instead of Broken Blade, you're putting in like Mirwin or something. The problem is Kana, probably the best top in Europe, isn't European, so he's not cracking on this list. G2 didn't even want Inspired, so maybe they prefer Skewmod or an El Yoya on here, but I think Caps is the de facto, yes, this guy's going to be the mid laner. There's no other options to accept.
There are other avenues that maybe you could entertain when looking at a team like this and how you're assembling it, especially, again, as you said, if you want to go down a different avenue of how you're building it out, take out Kalist, my guy who's raising the shield and bringing this team together. If you take him out and throw in Hansama, I think the dynamic, of course, is changing and shifting around on how you are wanting to build out this squad. Caps is that non-negotiable for me, though, when you are looking at the LEC, and I don't think that's any surprise to anybody how things have gone over the past half decade plus in the LEC, that Caps would be that untouchable, non-negotiable. It's got to be there in the mid lane.
And maybe the one guy you could perhaps talk about isn't actually a European player. He's going on the LCS squad, and we're talking about the master plan of Mr. Jojo Pyun. Yes, he's not playing in North America right now, but still, Canadian-owned, bred here, so he counts on the LCS squad. And now, unfortunately, you're throwing in Busio as well, who also is not playing in North America, but still North American. I guess you could argue he'd be on the LEC team as well because he does have that Polish residency. So technically, you could have put him over Alvaro, but we're still holding on to him on the LCS for now.
As long as we can, until he starts hitting the rift, Summoner's Rift over there in the LEC, we can hold on to Busio still LCS. And yes, I think even hearing the Avengers call, Jojo Pyun would return and answer the call for the LCS to fight in our battles like this. And it's got to be, for me, Big Dokes. It's all about the character. It's all about the heart in the top side, making the call to bring people over to represent and fight for NA, fight for the LCS. It's my man Big Dokes leading the charge as that heart of the team, and not just there for his heart, his gameplay, his style and approach, and I think in the smarts that he brings to Summoner's Rift. We've seen that throughout his veteran savvy this year, as well as looking at the other aspects of this team. Yes, you might not feel all that crazy about it because they are in the LEC, but Jojo Pyun and Busio are mega players when you're talking about assembling a team of this caliber and what they would have to go up against.
Yeah, I mean, they're the stars of this team, and I think because Team Liquid didn't perform that well, people are a little low on Yon these days, and I'm sure some people might rather see Masu here ahead of him, but I think you look at the body of work, even though FlyQuest was winning, Masu wasn't as lethal as in his rookie year, so I'm putting Yon here to be that star AD carry, and Big Dokes you mentioned. The leadership that we saw on 100 Thieves and boosting team morale and just overall vibes for the squad. And then other question mark, people might see contracts and say, wow, how are you not going to put Blabber on a roster like this? But contracts is there with the synergy with Dokla. And number two, we've seen Blabber and Jojo Pyun play together, and truthfully, the synergy didn't look that good.
Yes, and that's the really important factor for me is when you're looking at this one, the discrepancy, the power level between them. It's not to any such a degree where it is so crazy, but Blabber hasn't shown you the Blabberfish that we know and has built his resume and reputation off of in the last little while. So that's where you're not getting points for him in that regard. And then it comes down to going off of the synergy, the chemistry that you could imagine for these squads. Yes, a potential that we have already seen with Jojo Pyun and Blabber did not work out, and we have seen contracts and Dokla work out on the other side of the spectrum. So yeah, I'm going with that one. If I am the LCS here, and this is going to be my Avengers squad, I think it's a very tough battle. We might not have the superpowers or the super strength of some of these other regions, but we've got a super heart with Dokla carrying us around on this squad, and I think that it's got to count for something in a battle of the superheroes.
Yeah, it's not the most elite superpowers, you know. It's more like we can keep fruit fresher for longer than anyone else, you know. Everyone else is lifting up buses, and we're like, wow, we can extend your shelf life.
But hey, you're going to need to eat a lot of apples, a lot of oranges, a lot of bananas to stay at that, you know.
Yeah.
It is.
But honestly, best of the West, I think you're saying EU probably holds the title in this, again, purely hypothetical all-star lineup.
It's just difficult because the firepower, right? The explosive plays and skills and acceleration of the game that you can take over when you are building out superstar, superhero level Avenger squads like this. It is one of those ones where those factors become even more powerful, even more explosive, and you just don't bring them to the table in the same way that the LEC does. And the LEC can look at that the exact same way when they look at the LCK and those type of situations. So yeah, it's still how it all plays out around the world, but I think these at the very least would be some very fun and interesting teams and storylines to follow through at a potential event.
And I think both EU and North America at least could be competitive, take games off of this LPL team. I won't even mention any of the LCK ones we talked about, but at least in the same breath as what the LPL would be able to put together, which maybe wouldn't be the case in years past. We haven't forgot about you, LCP also. Still a major region, still to be included on this list. And this one's a little tricky because really, you'd probably just want to throw CFO. All 5 members on there, and I know there's rumors now that Hongq and Junjia aren't going to be there. Kaiwing's released, so technically you could include some of these guys, but we didn't want to cheat too hard. So the 2 CFO members, if you had to include them, are Doggo and Junjia, and that's because you have Maple that you can put instead of Hongq. I'd rather Hongq, but Maple a serviceable second.
It's one of those ones where if you're the LCP, and again, you are trying to figure this out, you are finding power where you can, right? That is one of those things that you are evaluating and where you can maximize it. And under that limitation of the 2 per team, yes, unfortunately, Hongq gets passed over to supplement this roster and other avenues with the power that CFO has shown us this year, bringing in Jangia, Doggo, very established power levels that we are seeing. I think if anyone actually is looking out of all these squads, if Draven is the mandated ADC pick, I think that maybe the LCP's already got their advantage right there with the way Doggo was playing it this year. But it does give you that availability to slot in Maple in the mid lane. You know, you can go with Kaiwing something in the top side and some of these options. You know, maybe even, heck, you could make an argument. What if we could get kind of combine them into a superhero power of that yin and yang of Rest and Driver? Throw them in that top side type of thing angle. I think that would be something. Again, the LCP, it's a tough battle for them in this type of situation with how things have been, but you got to maximize your power across, even knowing that you have such an outlier in CFO.
Yeah, and again, you're kind of including multiple nationalities in the LCP. You've got Vietnamese players, Taiwan, Hong Kong, all being incorporated in there, which is where Taki and Kiaya kind of throw in. Taki was the only non-CFO member to be on the All-Pro team in 2025, which is impressive considering how dominant they were. But yeah, I mean, you could throw in Karsa, you could include, again, if you're saying Honkyu and Junji are on JDG, well, then you can include both of them, then you throw Doggo in, but again, it's a little cheating, you know.
Come on, you got to bend the rules a little bit in some of these situations. And look, we're bending the rules to get a squad like this assembled. I'm willing to let this one slide. I think a couple people also are going to let it slide in a spot like this to get a showdown as we are trying to build up to here with these Avenger squads.
And if you threw all these together and put together some first stand type tournament, maybe the LCK gets 2 squads going, but either way, it'd be... The LCP could probably compete against EU and the LCS. They'd probably come out ahead. But again, the LCK, if they had 3 teams going, would probably be winning the whole thing and be top 3.
No surprise if that would be the situation from the LCK, especially when, as we laid out, you're talking about a list that would then, okay, well, Squad 2 is rolling with the unkillable Demon King and the world's finals MVP in Gumayushi. Oh, and then the third team is rolling with the other world's finalists in BD. You know, again, it is one of those type of ones.
It's no chance the LCK depth is completely unmatched to the other major regions, but that is it today for League Unlocked.